Okay, so we're going to create some fun fills here, and I'm going to create some badges or patches. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and come to my Bezier tool and just make sure that it's set to Bezier up here in the top menu. You can select none for shape, and I'm just gonna shift click on black, left click on fill. My stroke I'm gonna set to maybe 1 for now. And then I'm gonna go ahead and draw a line that kind of goes from the halfway point to the halfway point diagonally. So this is at 50 millimeters and this is at 50 millimeters. And you can turn your snapping on up here in the top right corner to make sure that it's exactly in that spot. I don't know why it's not snapping, but I'm going to go to my node tool. So you may need to select grids here so that it's snapping to your grid. There we go. And there we go. Okay, so to create our sort of bracket shape, we're going to use this line and we're going to go to our path effect here, which is under path effects. And then this drop down arrow here, we're going to go to mirror symmetry. And then we're going to again add another path effect that is mirror symmetry, but this time we want our second mirror symmetry. We want to click this button that says horizontal center. Then we're going to move that down to the 50 millimeter mark there. It's going to snap into place. So now we have both vertical and horizontal symmetry happening here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add a couple of points by double clicking with my node tool, and then I'm gonna go ahead and bring that kind of up. That's pretty good. And then I'm gonna select that point there and I'm gonna sort of round it out. You can actually leave that. Let's leave it. It needs to be, both need to be square points when I delete one, or else I'm gonna get some weird rounding. So that's the shape I'm looking for. Just kind of want to do like an interesting bracket shape. You can do whatever you like to do, whatever shape you like. Square this up a little bit more. A little bit more even. And then in order to create one shape, I need to go to fuse paths, and usually wants me to do the first mirror symmetry first. So I'll do fuse path there, and then I can flatten that. And then I want to do fuse path again, and if it's not showing up, that's because you need to fuse opposite sides. And then you can flatten that. And now you have a bracket shape that is all attached and is one shape. We have our badge shape we're going to go ahead and fill this one with whatever we want our background color to be, and then we're going to shift left click so it's just the fill, and then I'm going to go Command D, or you can go to Edit, Duplicate to duplicate it. And then you can see in your layers panel that you have two shapes. So our second shape, we want to shift left click on the black and left click on none so that it's an outline with no fill. And for that one, we're going to go ahead and make the outline 4 because we want a pretty thick line there to go around our patch that we're making. We're going to do something fun with the fill part here. So I'm going to go ahead and hide those two shapes for now. And then I'm going to come over here to my symbols library. And so I have added to my library some commonly used shapes. And I didn't even bother to name them or anything. I just put them in here. So you can watch my video about how to add shapes to your symbol library. But I have this roller skate here. If you need to find a SVG of a shape that you want to add, I recommend the Noun project. So here's a roller skate that's similar to the one I have, and you can download them with attribution required, or you can purchase them, or you can get a subscription. So just some options for you there to use different shapes. This is the shape that I created, and I'm going to go ahead and use this for my pattern, and I'm going to make it smaller, and I'm going to go ahead and come to back to my path effects and do tiling, and I'm gonna, the reason why it's not tiling is because it's a cloned shape. So I need to unlink that clone. And you can find that under Edit, Clone, Unlink Clone. And now I can go to Path Effects, Tiling, and I can create a pattern. And I know that I like this. I like the skates to be back to back and kind of make a pair of skates. And I also like to offset it, this one, which kind of offsets the pairs. I'm going to go ahead and fill my space with that, and then I'm going to go ahead and flatten this, and I'm going to, that's a combined shape. I'm going to go to Inkstitch, Edit, Selection to Pattern. So now you can see there's a tiny pattern marker right there, and that means that's going to be my pattern. So this one, it's already in a folder, so I'm gonna go ahead and just add my filled shape to that folder on top of my skate pattern. The filled shape that you want to have the pattern on it needs to be on top with the pattern underneath, marked as a pattern, and it needs to be grouped together. So those are what makes it have the pattern. So, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn back on my satin line, and I'm going to put that on the very top. So now let's see what this looks like in realistic view. So I'm going to go Command Shift right arrow. So there it finished the preview, and it thinks that this outer line is just a running stitch because I haven't told it to turn it into a satin stitch yet. But we can still check our, I'm going to zoom in here by hitting Control and scrolling in with my mouse. And you can see that those shapes are there. So they're kind of like a small satin shape with fill around it. I'm going to select the number 5 so that it fits to canvas. And I'm going to go ahead and delete my stitch preview and view my layer. And then I need to select this outer line, and I need to go Inkstitch, Satin, convert line to satin. And now it has turned that into a satin line. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step of just adding text. And I'm not going to use the text tool here. I'm just going to use Inkstitch's lettering. And I like the font that I want to use is it's this Magnolia font. So I recommend that you put your lettering on a separate line, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to go ahead and make this scale at 80%. As you can see, it's 20 millimeters, and if I look at the total size of my design, it's at 80 right now. So that's kind of a lot of stitching. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit apply and quit. And then I'm going to take that, and if you look in your layers panel, and here you have your lettering, you can see that each line is its own folder. So I can select just this gate, and then I can select my selection tool and just move that one line. And then the of is very big. I want that to be smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and put days here and 100. And so I like to make these patches for people who commit to skating for 100 days in a row and for at least 1 hour. So it's kind of a challenge that people can do, and I like to create badges for my friends who have completed that. And then go back into your lettering tool. And the reason why I like this is because there's a small version of that font. So it has a Magnolia small. So that's what I want to select. And I'm just going to type the word of. It's at 50%, which is going to make it between 25 and 50%. So we'll make it 30. So I'm going to apply and quit. It's going to put my lettering up here at the top. And then I can add that there. So now I'm going to hit save if you haven't. And then I'm going to hit Command Shift right arrow so I can see what this looks like when it stitches out. That there's all these jumps. So I believe that's something we can change in the lettering tool. So we'll go ahead and do that. Let me Command Z. Click on my lettering. Add trims. After each word is what I want it to do. And we're going to go ahead and delete of. and hit apply and quit. And you can see it moved it back up there. So we'll have to rearrange that again by going into our lettering. And selecting each thing separately. And then for our of, you can go Command Shift Q. Go ahead and add a trim. And hit apply and quit. So now we can save that again. Command S. And if you don't know, you can find the stitch plan preview under Visualize and Export Stitch Plan Preview. That will bring up your options. I like it when it hides my design, my SVG, shows me a realistic view, renders jump stitches, adds an ignore layer command, and overrides the last stitch plan. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. So I think we forgot to hit apply and quit, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so we still have some jumps here, but we're going to go ahead and just stitch it out and see what it looks like and see if it actually jumps in these places. And you can always change the color of one of these, of each line, so that it forces a trim, and then you don't have to worry about that jumping there, because it's going to trim to change colors. Okay, so there's one more thing I do need to recommend before trying to stitch this out, and that is that we cannot stitch these skates filled in like this, or it will try to do like a satin stitch. And if you see up right here where they're all connected, it will try to do one long stitch right along there. And we don't want that, because that's not going to work on most machines. And then your path can change back to our like mint green, and I'm going to change some of my lettering around as well. Save that. Then I'm going to Command Shift period to do my stitch plan preview. So there we go. Now you can still see the skate shape within the fill in the background. Okay, so one thing that you need to do that you can't really see here is to add an underlay to this outer line, because if you were using a different color bobbin thread, like a white bobbin thread, sometimes it'll pull through. So I'm going to go ahead and add a zigzag underlay to that. So I'm going to Control Z, and I'm going to select that path that is my outline path, and I'm going to Command Shift P to go to params, to zigzag underlay, and I'm just going to make sure that that is selected, and then I'm going to apply and quit. Now you can see how that is making a penetration there around the skate shape. You can still see them, but it's not trying to stitch these long stitches, and that's what we want. So now we can export this and see what it looks like when it stitches out. So I like to stitch my patches on acrylic felt. I'll show you how I cut those out. I just grabbed a scrap piece of acrylic felt and used a fast frame to float it on. You can just float it on top of your sticky stabilizer. So one thing I like about floating my acrylic felt is you can just tear it off with the stabilizer, and at that point you would want to add an iron-on to the back before you cut it out. And I'm going to use a glass trivet from the Dollar Tree and this heat tool with the point tip on it. And then you can just cut around your patch. And the nice thing about if you use polyester thread, even if you touch the thread, it's just gonna melt it and seal it. It's not going to like ruin your thread by causing the thread to unravel. So that's one of the benefits of using this heat tool. It kind of just seals everything in. And you can do it with the iron-on back, and it'll go through the iron-on as well. And it's just a way to make it a nice clean cut after the fact. And once I'm done cutting it out, you can see it doesn't take long at all. I will usually come in with fabric markers, and I'll find a color that kind of matches my satin stitch that goes around, and I'll kind of fill that in. And most of the time it's very difficult to tell that it's marker. The other thing that you can do is just use a piece of felt that better matches your thread, and use bobbin thread that also matches. I didn't do that, so that's why I'm filling this in with fabric marker. Okay, so for our next fun fill, we have our 100 by 100 millimeter hoop again. And I'm gonna go ahead and just draw a square, and I'm gonna have it snap to just 1 centimeter around and 2 centimeters at the top. I'm gonna go ahead and change the width to 1. We'll just leave that at black for now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and double click on, oops, I need to change this rectangle to an object. So I'm going to go path, object to path, and then I'm going to double click in the center line there. I'm just going to lift it up, and then I'm going to click on this button here that is symmetric, and then I'm going to pull these so that it kind of creates a slight rounded shape there. And I'm actually going to take these 2 points and I'm going to bring them down about 1 centimeter. So now I have my arch shape as 2 centimeters. So that's going to be my basic window shape for this next design. So I'm going to go ahead and import my design that I want. Right, so we're just going to come to the noun project and we're going to search on cat. And it's going to bring up a lot of different cat images, and I like this cat image here. So the attribution is here, and I'm going to download with attribution required. And you can do an SVG or a PNG. I'm going to download as an SVG. And then I'm going to actually now go to File, Import, and my noun cat should be there at the top, and I'm going to open it. And I'm going to go ahead and control drag, and I'm going to ungroup that, Command Shift G, and I can remove now the attribution, and I can move my cat down and over to the side here. So I'm going to make this look like a window screen, and I'm going to put a pattern in the background. That's just going to be a motif run. So it's just going to be a run stitch that makes a repeating pattern. That's called a motif usually in most embroidery software. So I'm going to go ahead and hide these shapes right now, and I'm going to work on my motif, and I'm going to, if you hold Control and scroll with your mouse, it'll zoom in. And I'm going to kind of come over here to the top left of my shape here. And I'm going to build my shape up here because when I tile it, it's going to tile to the right and down. So I'm going to come back to my my Bezier tool, and I'm just going to start with some straight lines. And I want to think about that each stitch is about 2.5 millimeters. That's the default size for a stitch. So if you make it smaller than that, sometimes it has trouble routing it because it's trying to create everything as a 2.5 millimeter stitch. So I'm gonna go ahead and come up 3 and come over 4, come down 2, come back up 2, and come down 3. And I'm going to change this to 0.25 millimeters. And it's going to be like half of a fish shape. And I'm going to use the tiling to get my full fish shape. I'm going to press 5 to fit to canvas. And then I'm going to come to my path effect, and I'm going to come down to tiling. And I want to select this middle mirroring mode so it mirrors horizontally but not vertically. So now you can see it's creating that fish shape. So I'm going to go ahead and add some rows and columns to fill this space. And I kind of decided that I like this shape a little better. When I click one down from the mirror horizontally, it then offsets it and reverse mirrors each shape. So I kind of like the pattern that was created from there. So I think I'm gonna stick with that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my rectangle that I manipulated here, and I'm gonna kind of hold Control and Shift so it changes from the center, and you just want to make sure that your shape fits inside of there. I noticed that it has trouble routing whenever you cut your shape like halfway in between. It doesn't get to do its whole shape. Obviously you're gonna have to cut some of the shapes up here. You can avoid a lot of problems by just trying to make it fit inside of there as much as possible. And I think that I want these to be a little smaller. So I'm gonna go ahead and come back to my tiling and add a couple of columns and then fit it again. Also, you want this line that kind of is formed to be in the center of your canvas. Otherwise it looks just off. So that's something else that you want to be mindful how it's fitting into the shape, that it's because we're going to clip it and you're not going to see all these extra shapes out here. So I'm going to add a couple of rows and we're going to stop right there. What I do is make sure that my cat, I think I actually want this to be as big as possible. So I'm going to raise the size of that by quite a bit. And then I'm going to select both of those and I'm going to duplicate them, Command D, and I'm going to hide those two that I just duplicated so that I can just work with these first two copies of the shapes. And I actually want to fill the window shape, and I'm going to go ahead and right now it's not at full opacity because you can see that now you can't really see the cat. So I'm going to select the cat and make the cat a different color so you can see what's happening. So you want your cat to be in front of your window shape, and we want to actually cut this out of the window shape, cut the cat shape out of the window shape. And we're going to go ahead and do that by going to Path and going to Difference. And now we have a negative shape of the cat cut out of this window. And this is going to be what is going to be our clipping mask. So additionally to doing that, we're then going to clip this black area out of our fish shapes. So I turn my fish shapes back on, and they're beneath our window shape, and we can change the color of our window shape. Make sure you shift left click to get rid of the outline. We do not need an outline on that. And make sure that your fish shape is fitting well inside your path, and hit save if you haven't already at this point. So basically we're going to do a clipping mask so that all of this disappears and the only part of our fish motif that shows through is within our window shape. So I'm going to go ahead and right click, and then I'm going to hit so you want to select your front shape first, so it'll give you this option of set clip, and that's what we want. So it doesn't look good, and so now we need to turn our shapes back on so that we can have these two other paths as a black outline with no fill. So, and I'm going to make that 0.25. And this is going to help with our routing because it's going to have this outline shape and this inner shape to be able to create its routing. So we're going to try to route this now and see if it routes. But before I do that, I need to make one more copy of my window shape that I can turn into a satin stitch. So I'm going to duplicate that one more time and I'm going to hide it. Now I can select all these lines and I want to auto route this to stitch out as a running stitch. So I'm going to go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Stroke, Auto Route Running Stitch. And you can add nodes at the intersection. We do not need to preserve the order of the running stitches. We don't want to trim our jump stitches. We want it to route instead of jumping. So we're going to go ahead and hit Apply. and sometimes this can take a while. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. Okay. So that's complete now. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command-Shift-P so you can see what that looks like. And sometimes it can take a while even to show up in the parameters. So just be patient, wait for it, and if my computer can handle it, yours probably can too. I don't have the newest computer, so. And there you can see it stitch it all out. If we go to jump stitch, we don't really have any jump stitches. Don't select trim, because then it'll take a long time and it'll add a trim after each fish. And obviously it'll crash it and it won't save it that way, but it just takes time to have to undo that once you accidentally click that. So don't hit trim, just leave it as is. We're just checking it to see what it looks like, and we can go ahead and hit cancel right there, and you'll want to save at that point. Turn back on our outer line that we had previously hidden, and we're gonna make that's gonna be our window satin stitch. So we're gonna go ahead and right click down here, and we're gonna make that about 4 millimeters so we can then create our satin stitch. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to extensions, Inkstitch, Satin, convert line to satin. And that's going to be our satin stitch. So I'm going to Command S to save that. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a little vine here that is going to also be a satin stitch. So I'm going to come back to my Bezier tool, and this time I'm going to select the Spiral Path tool, and I'm going to shift left click on whatever green color you want, or whatever color you want your vine to be. And then I'm just going to kind of click. You can see it makes your line very rounded and smooth. And then I'm going to right click, and I had a fill on there, so I need to turn that off. And then I can kind of play with this vine and just shape it however I want it to look. I'm going to turn my snapping off so I can adjust this. Oops. Okay, so there's our vine that we're going to have here. And I'm going to go ahead and come to my path effect and flatten that. Alternately, you can go to path, object to path, and that does the same thing. So now we just have a regular path here, and we can Command L to simplify it if you want to adjust it some more and play with it in a more, adjust it in a more normal way. It doesn't have the spiral path effect added to it anymore. So from there I can go to extensions, Inkstitch, Satin, convert line to satin again, and it has created a satin stitch there. So I'm going to Command S to save that, and I'm going to add some leaves and flowers. And if you watched my previous video on creating the satin stitch library, you will have all these shapes as well. So I'm going to get my basic satin leaf, and I'm going to drag it out here. Go ahead and go to Edit, Clone, Unlink Clone. And if I Command Shift P to look at my params, with my leaf selected, you can see that it maintains the satin properties. So I'm gonna go ahead and make this smaller. Maybe not that small. And I'm gonna click on it twice and rotate it. And then I'm gonna duplicate it, Command D. I'm gonna mirror it by pressing this horizontal flip button, and then I'm gonna Command D, and I'm just gonna rotate this one a little bit, and I'm gonna do maybe one more, Command D, and flip that on the horizontal. Stop there, and I'm gonna save it, and I'm going to add some flowers. And I'm going to come over here to my basic satin shape library again, and I'm going to grab a heart. And I'm going to edit, clone, unlink clone. And I'm going to shift left click on this dark fuchsia. And I'm going to make that smaller. And I'm going to add a few of these as flowers. So I'm going to Command D to duplicate, flip it on the vertical, add one here, duplicate it, rotate it, and add one there. So then I'm going to save it, Command S, and I'm going to go to Extension, Inkstitch, Visualize Export, Stitch Plan Preview. And I like Hidden, Render Jump Stitches, Ignore Layer Command, and Override Last Stitch Plan. And I'm going to hit Apply. And we're going to see what this looks like when it stitches out. And this may take a while as well, so just be patient, let it think, and it'll show you what that's going to look like when it stitches out. I'm going to close this. You can see that my leaves, I needed to add a jump to those because they are, there's a jump stitch in between. My machine might take care of that, but I needed to have added that jump. So I'm going to Command Z to undo that. I'm going to select my leaf, and you can see it's a lighter green. So I'm going to be able to go to right click, select Same, and Stroke Color. And I'm going to go to Command Shift P, which is my params. You can see I do have jumps there. So I need to add trim after. And now it's trimming in between all of my leaves, and I can apply and quit. Save that. Command Shift a period. And there's our final stitch out. So we'll go ahead and export this and take it to the machine. And I'm going to stitch this on some fuzzy material so the cat looks like a fuzzy animal. So we'll see what that looks like, and I'm not sure. Oh, there's a jump stitch. So the motif is ending here. My satin stitch is starting here, so it's thinking that it has to jump there. It probably won't once I take it to the machine. But if you want to correct that quickly, just change the color of your satin stitch or your motif stitch, and then your machine will pause and trim in between those two colors. So I'm going to go ahead and save and export this, and I'll show you what it looks like when it stitches out. So I had this scrap piece of fur from when I made stockings at Christmas, so I just decided to test it out on here. It did have a little bit of a stain on it, so I apologize for that, but it's still a good sample stitch out here. And here's the final project, and I kind of cleaned up the image. And I also decided to try to do it on black with a lighter color stitch. This material wasn't as fuzzy, so it didn't look as good.